What is up, guys, and welcome to ASL Week 10 Power Rankings. Today I am joined with Hutch,
What's up, guys?
and I am once again excellent name. Sorry if I sound a little bit weird. I'm a bit sick today, but let's just jump right into number 14 pick, which we have as the Master. And honestly, I kind of wanted to move him up this week. He had some really phenomenal prep and played a lot better than he had in previous games, but he did still lose in the end. So he is 0-10, eliminated from playoffs. So really cannot justify putting him up just because he had some cool tech in his game.
Yeah, so Demaster, he was so close. This is the best game that he's played all season, and he had some great prep, like with the Marowak to get rid of the Lando. It was genius. It's just some crucial damage in sets that he had that really determined if he had like a Scarf Rotom, maybe he could have brought it back if he kept his Mons a little bit healthier, maybe. It was just so very, very close, but 0-10 is not looking good.
Yeah, for sure. It's I really do hope he wins the game, but he does honestly have a pretty difficult schedule as well, so it's not looking super good for him. But at number 13, we have Cam, Washington Wailords, and I don't think he has won a game since like the first 3 weeks. He's been like in a pretty big slump.
He won week
Um,
9.
oh, did he? Okay, never mind. Still, he had on a really long losing streak, which was a bit disappointing to see after he had such a strong early season. He had like won 2 games pretty early on. He was up quite high in the leaderboard. I don't remember exactly where he peaked, but yeah, it was just a little bit disappointing to see his performance slide so much this season. I still think he improved a lot since last season. His new team is a fair bit better than what he drafted last season, so I think that might be a contributing factor. But he just kind of doesn't have that consistency that the coaches above have, so he didn't win as many games as I'm sure he would have liked to.
Yeah, like you said, it's been quite honestly disappointing to see Cam get off to such a strong start. He was like 2-1 or 2-2 at one point, and now he's sitting at 3-7. So yeah, he picked up a week 9 win, but week 10 he got 4-0'd by TJ if I'm not mistaken. And any game over a 3-0, unless it comes down to like, oh, is it going to be a speed tie, or if it's like a really close thing that determines the game, basically everything over a 3-0 is not a competitive game. And it's just, yeah, Cam has been quite honestly getting destroyed lately. And if you compare his differential to Milan's differential, Cam is a negative 23 and Milan is a negative 13 and they have the same record. So if that shows any insight of how much Cam is getting destroyed in his losses.
Yeah, for sure. It's just that big differential gap really does make the difference here, which is why I kind of wanted to put Milan a little bit lower, honestly, just because it's been disappointed. Milan is usually a very strong coach, and while he did take over a team that he's not completely comfortable with, I would have liked to see some better performances from him still. He's definitely had some close games overall, which is shown by his differential being nowhere near as bad as Cam's. But I definitely would have expected some more wins to come out of him. In his Week 10 game, it barely seems like he was trying. He had a really cool set with the Tapu Koko that honestly could have put in a lot of work, but he ended up sacking it nonsensically by brave birding a Gigalus. He told me himself that he was just throwing at that point. So he's not really got the mentality of a winner at this point. I think he just kind of got a little bit like looking forward to the future rather than thinking about now since he's already eliminated from playoffs, I guess. But still definitely disappointing to see such a strong coach performing so poorly.
Yeah, and if this were any other season where Milan didn't have to take over a team that he absolutely does not like in the slightest, then there's no way he would be down here. He'd be much higher because he's a fantastic coach. But he does not like his team at all, and it was kind of just one of those situations where it's like, all right, well, the team is in a losing situation anyways, don't like the team. let's just take it over and wait it out until next season, get a team that he's comfortable with, and yeah, he can go from there. But I mean, I played him this week, and it seemed like he just wasn't sacking things with a purpose. He was kind of just throwing things at my Mons, and I was kind of just like, okay, don't really understand that. Like, he could have saved Tapu Koko fairly easily. It's a Gigalith. You have swap-ins to it, and I don't really understand his play. But like I said, he might just be like, oh, let's just have fun with it, and yeah, get to the next season.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the mentality that he's got here. But we'll just go into PC Barcelona Shadow here. The main tiebreaker that made me decide to place him below Malone and whatnot is the fact that he lost to Malone this week. I feel like he's probably had a stronger overall season, just because he's had some higher quality wins. But looking at a 4-6 record to be down here is definitely a testament to how close this season is. He's had a phenomenal season compared to last season for sure. He's probably a shoo-in for most improved coach this season, just because of like how well he's been playing. He's picked up some really high-profile wins this season, but unfortunately, I believe, is eliminated from playoffs at this point.
Nope, not yet.
No? Okay. He's very close to being eliminated. It's highly unlikely that even if he wins out, it's highly unlikely that he will make playoffs at this point, despite having such a strong season, which, once again, a little bit disappointing, but he's done a very good job of playing up to this point. Just this loss against Malone has really hurt him in the power rankings.
Yeah, and basically the only reason that he's down here as opposed to other coaches is because of his record. I'm not gonna spoil too much about the next slide, but yeah, Shadow has played pretty well. I mean, last season he went 2-11, and he's 4-6 now, so he's already greatly improved his record. And yeah, there's a slim chance that if he wins all of his games by very large margins, that he'll be able to make the playoffs. It's highly unlikely, though. He's got to win like every game by like 4-0 or better. It's not in his odds, or the odds are not in his favor. But get a good seed for the consolation bracket, and yeah, just keep improving on this, and we'll see you in the yellow column next year. So regardless of how the season ends up, it's been very good to see Shadow improve tremendously.
Yeah, for sure. Coming in at number 10, I have Malone, and Malone has had a very Maloney season. He's definitely pulled his head out these past 2 weeks, where he picked up 2 wins, one over TJ and one over Shadow, which is definitely like the main reason why I decided to place him above Shadow. I think Shadow might have had an overall higher quality wins overall. But I think that just beating Shadow is that kind of tiebreaker that's going to push him a little bit above. Once again, it's highly, highly unlikely that he makes playoffs, especially with his kind of differential and remaining schedule. But he's definitely been showing up a little bit in his past couple of games. So I wanted to reward him a little bit for that and move him up in the rankings.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a difference in opinion here, and I have the Utah Hoots at number 10. And now my reasoning for putting Susie below Malone, although Susie is 5-5 and Malone is 4-6, I think that it just simply comes down to how they've been playing recently. Susie, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, has been playing awful recently. He's going into games not knowing what he's doing, quite honestly. It just looks like he's clicking accept when someone sends a battle invite and kind of just rolling with it. He doesn't really seem like he has a set game plan. His prep has not been there. In every loss that he's had this season, he's gotten utterly destroyed differential-wise. And yeah, I just don't think a team that started out 5-2, that was at number 1 in the standings at one point in this season, should be down here at 5-5. Susie had a really good shot at making playoffs, but I think he's squandered it, honestly. There's always the possibility that he wins 3 games in a row, but he's going to be playing someone else, or you, AZ, and me, I think. So he's got
Yeah,
a
that's
he's got a relatively difficult schedule. So I think he's kind of botched this season in terms of making a playoff run.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The fact of the matter is that he had the easiest starting schedule. That's how he started off 5-2. He still hasn't won any games against coaches with a positive record, bar TCP, who at the time had a 2-4 record. So he hasn't picked up any like high quality wins yet, which is obviously really making people doubt whether he has any kind of shot at making the run when he does have to fight 3 playoff contending teams. Um, the 5-5 record though does kind of serve as a gatekeeper. I feel he kind of gatekeeps all the lower teams, which is why I did decide to put him a little bit higher than Malone, just because he does have that better record, and he did beat Malone. He's beaten all of the lower down teams except for Shadow, I believe. So yeah, he definitely needs to step up his game. He needs to learn how to play better coaches, and I think to do that, he needs to study his games more, stop clicking buttons, um, and relying on having a team that is very good against lower level players, I guess, because like you've said before, Mega Venusaur is not a difficult Pokemon to use. It definitely will carry you through lower levels. So I think Susie just really needs to improve at his playing ability.
Yeah, his team is fantastic for what his record is.
It really is.
So at number 9, I have Malone here, and on the contrary of Susie only being able to beat lower teams and not being able to beat playoff teams, Malone is the opposite. He's played spoiler a lot for the past 2 years. He's got some nice wins, you know. He's got one over Shadow, which was someone that was like they were button heads trying to get in front of the other. He picked up a win over Brad when Brad was still a coach, and Brad has the most wins out of any ASL coach of all time. He's picked up a win over TCP, which is now in a playoff spot. And there's one more win, not 100% sure what it is, but Malone has honestly picked up
TJ.
a TJ. All right,
Yeah.
TJ, another playoff team. Malone, as much as he may doubt himself, he has played extremely well. And even the match where I played against him, week 2, he played that match really, really well. He knew when to put on pressure and he knew when to make the right swaps. So Malone is also, along with Shadow, improving a lot as a coach. And it goes back to the same thing with Shadow. It's like you got a very slim chance to make playoffs. You essentially have to win out, get a lot of differential points, but Malone has picked up some nice wins that he can definitely be proud of this season.
Yeah, for sure. He does still fight me, so I hope that he doesn't pull on Malone and beat me.
Be careful.
But yeah. But coming in at number 8, we have Keister, and he's had a very quiet season so far. He's pulled in some modest wins. As usual, he usually starts off fairly decently, and then kind of peters out a little bit in the middle season, but he's mostly been keeping a 500 record the entire time through. He's picked up a few quality wins, like over Ian and AZ and stuff, and I'd say he's got one of the better chances of making playoffs because his schedule is like, it's doable. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like a lot of these 5-5 teams have rather challenging schedules. But I could definitely see Keister making a run here. But I do think that overall, coaches above him have had a more solid season. So I did decide to put him a little bit lower than coaches such as AZ.
Yeah, and Keister, honestly, for the past 2 seasons, has really flew under the radar in terms of when it comes to playoff time. And like you said, he's got a relatively easy schedule. He's going to play TCP, which is a playoff coach. So if he can beat TCP, that already opens up the gate for him because he's going to have TCP lose at some point. So you might as well make him lose in that match. And then he's going to play Malone and Shadow. And if he wins all 3 of those games, I don't really see any reason why he doesn't make the playoffs. Yeah, he's had some big losses and he's had some big wins. He started out the gate strong, cooled off a little bit, brought it back on, cooled off a little bit. He's been a very hit or miss player, but keep it consistent, stay around that 500 record, and then really make a playoff push. That's the best strategy to do it. That's how he got in last season. He was around that 500 mark about the entire year, made a nice little surge for the playoffs, and got in at the 6th seed, and that is what I'm
Did he?
thinking will happen. Yeah, he got the
I
6th seed
thought
last season.
Cody. Wow, I do not remember him even being in playoffs, honestly, which
He
really is a testament
played
to.
he played TCP round 1. Cody got in the 5th
Okay.
seed, and I played him round 1.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but he definitely
Compare.
is that quiet coach. I didn't even remember him being in playoffs, which is definitely shocking considering he did win season 3.
I
But
think he got
that's a
6
different
0
discussion.
round 1.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably why I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have loved me to not remember.
But yeah, I mean, Keister has probably the best chance besides AZ out of the 5-5 coaches to make a playoff run. So if he can beat TCP, I think he will make playoffs. If he loses to TCP, I don't think he'll make playoffs. So that is a very deciding game coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And coming in next, we have AZ, who's in a very similar situation to Keister, but he does have the better differential overall. His schedule is arguably more difficult, I guess you could say. He fights the Master first, which definitely is not that. But then he does have to fight TCP week 13 and sorry, I don't have it up right now.
He plays Susie week 12.
And Susie week 12. So he's definitely got a very solid shot at winning out. And once again, fighting TCP, that 6th seed currently does immensely improve his odds because he is in control of making TCP lose that game that he needs to lose. So that week 13 game is going to be a very big deciding factor. I think AZ has a bit better chances than Keister just because he does have a high differential and there's a very strong chance that there will be tiebreakers to get that 6th seed. There always is. AZ's had a more consistent season, I think, and he's picked up some wins versus some higher level coaches, in my opinion.
Yeah, AZ, I would say, is in control of his own destiny. His schedule definitely helps him out the most because you're going to be playing TCP, a team that needs to lose anyways, so you might as well just get that over with. And then you're going to have to play Susie, which is a team that you can eliminate by beating. Well, essentially eliminate by beating. And then Demaster, a team that you should win against. So, assuming he wins all 3 of those games, I'm pretty sure he'll get into playoffs unless TCP beats him out in differential. That's the only thing that I can think of. But yeah, AZ definitely has a very real possibility of making it into playoffs. He's just got to focus up these last couple of weeks and really get those wins. But like I've said with Keister, if you can't beat TCP, you are essentially eliminating yourself from playoffs.
Yeah, it definitely does look that way. Although theoretically, TCP could lose to both myself and either Keister or AZ to make the 6th seed be a 7-6 race, meaning that either Keister or AZ could make playoffs while still losing to TCP, assuming that they beat him out in differential. Not the most likely situation. I think it's highly likely that there'll be an 8-5 tiebreak at this point. Just how it looks like it's playing out if TCP does lose one of those games. So yeah, it's definitely a really tight race currently, mostly from 8 till 6. But yeah, we'll see how that ends up going. At number 6, we do have TCP, and that's just simply because he has he's the most likely coach to dip below the mark just because of his differential. Every single time, differential ends up being that crucial deciding factor for the 6th seed. It's almost every single season it's been a tiebreaker. TCP has a very difficult schedule ahead of him as well, fighting Keister, myself, and AZ. So 3 very competent coaches all out for blood looking for that win. So if he can keep his cool, then he's definitely got a good shot because he does have a higher differential than both Keister, AZ, and one more win above them. But if he starts to falter a bit after his long streak, then he could very much drop below. So yeah, it'll definitely depend on how much he can keep up his performance because he has been on a very long streak, which has definitely been impressive to see. He went from 4-4 to 6-4, I think.
I think it was 2-4 to
No,
6.
2-4 to 6-4.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so very good streak that he's been on, and he definitely wants to keep that up if he wants to stay in this spot because there's a lot of people nipping at his heels still.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple why TCP's in this spot because he has to be the most worried going into the last 3 weeks of the season. Um, you know, we talk about the differential being the killer. It really is. I mean, TCP's differential is +1, and Ian's differential is +7 or +8, and Ian is in the fifth spot. So that's a big gap. And if it does come down to a tiebreaker, TCP in likelihood will lose the tiebreaker. And yes, he can eliminate a lot of people. TCP can destroy a lot of people's playoff hopes in the upcoming weeks. But just the simple fact of differential is going to kill you. We got to put him at number 6. And, even if he wins the rest of his games, if Ian, myself, and TJ all win the rest of our games, then TCP will still sit at the 6th spot unless he, 6-0s every single time. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, coming in at number 5, we both have Ian for similar reasons. His differential is definitely in a much better spot overall, but it is still low enough that in theory he could drop out of playoffs even while maintaining a similar record, assuming that Keister and AZ pick up some really big wins. Both of them could hypothetically overtake TCP and Ian. If Ian loses one more game. That being said, it's not super likely that he does. His remaining schedule is relatively easy. He does fight TJ as his hardest opponent, which he very much could lose. But realistically, he's going to need to lose 2 games to drop out of playoffs, so he probably should be feeling quite comfortable in this spot. Although that being said, losing to TCP this week definitely would have hurt him quite a fair bit because before this he was still fighting for that bye seed, but unfortunately that loss to TCP has dropped him down a fair bit just because of his differential.
Yeah, so in my opinion, 1 through 5 is pretty much guaranteed. Yes, there's hypotheticals that would say otherwise. There's a chance that some of the 5, 4, and 3 teams lose 3 games in a row or they lose 2 games. There's possibilities, but in my opinion, differentials are just too high. Schedules are relatively easy, with a few exceptions. So I feel like 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are basically all locks for playoffs. But we can still shuffle around the seeding. People can still get buys while it's unlikely. Other people can get buys. We'll see how it all shakes up. But yeah, Ian is. It's nice to finally put Ian back in the yellow because he did not have the greatest season last season. But just draft a Mega Scizor or Finny Garchomp core every single season.
Sorry, I think you're cutting out a little bit there.
All right, go ahead and talk about 4 or 5, whatever you're on.
All right. Yeah, 4. I have TJ here, and at this point, I feel like TJ and Hutch are so close as far as their seasons have been that it's very nitpicky to put one above the other. I will say that TJ has an overall much easier schedule ahead of him. But with that being said, the main tiebreaker here, I think, is going to be how I believe they will perform in playoffs. And I feel that Hutch has got a much stronger chance in playoffs than TJ does. TJ has been seen to have more losses against the top teams than Hutch. Hutch has been more likely to lose to the lower level teams, which obviously will not be in playoffs. So just because of that, Hutch has probably got the stronger chance of making it through to semis, finals, and winning it than TJ does, in my humble opinion. So that was really the only tiebreaker that I could have for them. Yes, TJ has the high differential and it's the easiest schedule, but at this point it realistically does not matter because they're both pretty much locked in. Seeding, they very likely could face each other depending on how seeding works, or they will not face each other and flip their seeds. Either way, it doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah, so basically the reasoning that I have myself at 4 and TJ at 3, I could be nitpicky about myself and say differential because TJ is 6-4 with a plus 14, while I'm 6-4 with a plus 13. But it really just comes down to the fact that I have lost to TJ, and TJ has been playing better recently. I have only recently picked up a few wins, or this is my first win in 3 weeks this week. So, TJ's definitely been playing better Mons recently, which is why, for the time being, got to put him ahead of me. And yeah, he's also beat me. He's got a slightly better differential. And yeah, I have to play Gran next week, which will be. He's 9-1 right now, so it'll be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's super up in the air about who to put ahead. That is a fair tiebreaker to choose. But yeah, Hutch has had a much stronger historical performance. He's made finals in the past 2 seasons, and I think it's highly likely that he'll do it again. TJ, on the other hand, this is his first playoffs. We've seen him to have nerves about big games, so I could see him potentially getting nervous and playing worse in his playoff games. So yeah, like I said before, for TJ, that is the only tiebreaker that I decided to go with. It's very, very close though. Very up in the air about who you place where. But yeah, I guess we'll just move on to number 2, where we both have Gran. And yeah, Gran has got a technically better record than I do, but because he did lose to me and he was the coach taken over for a coach that already had like a 7-0 record.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just going 2-1 isn't necessarily super impressive. It's obviously quite solid. He's probably going to get the first seed, but theoretically, if Gran loses 1 more game or 2 more games, then I could sneak ahead and get the first seed as well, depending on how big of the wins I get in the future are. But either way, it's mainly just because he did lose to me and hasn't played all of the games to reach the first seed that I did decide to put him in second.
Yeah, pretty simple logic. I mean, Grant took over a coach that it was basically a gift, what he received. Received a 7-0 record, a team that essentially had already clinched the playoffs, and he lost to you, so I had to put you over him. And yeah, Gran can definitely finish out the season well. I mean, he's a good coach. I'm not trying to knock him and say that he doesn't. He's bad. No, Gran is a very good coach. It's just, yeah, 1-1 hasn't really proven himself, but I can't knock him too much because he did lose to you. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You're both pretty much secured for playoffs. Gran has already clinched playoffs up until this point, but you are 1 game out of clinching at this point.
Yeah. And realistically, we've both pretty much clinched a bye as well. There'll need to be some pretty significant.
Unless something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah, because the next highest team has 4 losses, which means we need to lose 2 games, and then I'll need to lose 2 games and lose the differential war, which is fairly unlikely unless I lose fairly heavily, which also is quite unlikely. So yeah, realistically, these are the 2 bye teams. There's very little that could happen that would change that. The battle really is for seed, which is kind of irrelevant at this point. So it does come down to who we think will perform better in playoffs. And naturally, because I have played out the entire season and I've had a historically strong performance, whereas this is Grant's first season with only a few games played, it does look like I will likely have a stronger performance.
Fair enough.
So I think that wraps it up, unless you've got anything else to add.
Go for it.
So thank you guys for watching the Week 10 Power Rankings. Make sure to stay tuned for the rest of the season's videos. It's very tight, so you don't want to miss a thing. See you guys next time.